What up, everyone? It's Let Black. Happy Black History Month. Is day 1 of February. And like my brother Octavio just said, Black History Month is every day uptown. And we have a special guest, our council member, Carmen de la Rosa. Carmen, how you doing, sister?
Hi, good morning. Happy Black History Month.
That's right. That's right. Octavio, what's up, brother? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Good to be here on Sunday. I hope everybody's staying warm, joining us from somewhere cozy, maybe with a nice cup of tea or cup of coffee. Welcome to Black and Blanco.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. It shows us love and spread that uptown love. We need it. Keep spreading that love, y'all.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
Carmen,
yeah.
let's get
I want to just
Carmen.
remind you, if you haven't done it, let's go live on Instagram. I think you probably did. So welcome to
Yep.
everybody who's joining us on Instagram. Please make sure to join us in the comments. The comments are your friend. The comments is how we know where you're at. And let's get it. Let's get it going because we've got limited time here with our guests.
Carmen, so talk to me. This is a new year for you as well with the new mayor. How has it been so far?
Yeah, we're adjusting to a new council. We have a new speaker of the city council. We have new committee assignments. We have a new mayor. So, the last few weeks have been quick. In the middle of all of that, we got a storm. We have, one of the most historic snowfalls the city has seen, at least in the last decade. So, making sure that city services are functioning and responsive. We have been assigned our new committees. I just got elevated to be the technology chair at the city
Con-
council.
Hey,
Something,
Congratulations
congrats.
on that. Congratulations.
yeah, something new, something different. But I'm excited to bring my little, twist to it. And then obviously, we're looking at the mayoral administration, and they're getting their team together, appointing commissioners, deputy mayors, and directors of offices. And so we're definitely starting now to kick off with this new administration, sort of what the agenda is going to be that the council is going to focus on.
And I want to say one thing that at this historic time, at this historic juncture, it feels good to have someone like yourself, representing us. But we got to get right into it. Like right now, what ICE is doing in Minnesota, it's eventually going to come here, to New York City. How is the council and how are you preparing for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's here, right? Thankfully, we haven't seen any tragedies like the ones in Minnesota, but the tragedies are that communities in our city and families in our city are being broken up every single day. ICE and Homeland Security and ICE and enforcement are violent. We have seen what's happened in Minnesota, and I personally send my deepest condolences to the people of Minnesota that have had to endure this in real time, in real life, with the taking of two lives already. In New York City, just last week, we overrode Mayor Adams, shady ass veto. He
Hmm.
vetoed a bill that would have protected sanctuary cities as one of his outgoing gifts to the city council, a bill that had majority support. So just this week, we actually overrode that veto with almost unanimous support in the council. Um, Definitely unanimous from the Democratic side. And so we are prepared to, one, make sure that our sanctuary laws stay and that they are robust and that they can protect people. We are also looking, as the budget conversations begin, on how we can augment things like legal services protections. One of the main tools that people who are showing up to courts need is legal representation. Without that, I mean, they're getting deported with that. Imagine if they don't have the opportunity to have legal services on their side. I myself am part of a rapid response network that has been developed sort of as a mutual aid model from across the city. And anytime, anywhere we are, where ICE is, we have groups of people that are showing up there because it is important for those of us that have the privilege of being able to put our bodies on the line to do so. And so, between, literally forcefully advocating for the resources to protect New Yorkers, to make sure that our hospitals, our churches, our schools remain sanctuary cities, to making sure that legal services protections are there, to just showing up our neighbors need to see us showing up, because in this moment, if they don't see that, they feel unsafe, and that fear is real. We've seen a decline in participation of people not wanting to come for services, not wanting to ask for help, because they're afraid that if their information gets out there, that they could be detained, that they could be deported. I mean, we've seen that residents, citizens, Black Americans, white Americans, this brutal force of ICE does not discriminate at this point. They are taking everyone, and they're doing so in a violent way. So we're here to continue to stand up for our immigrant brothers and sisters, for sure.
A quick question on the rapid response. I think those are such useful tools for community members to alert one another and to be able to know where events are, where ICE is operating. If somebody isn't part of a community rapid response, how can they become involved? Do you know where can they find information?
Yeah, I mean, every community, and this is part of the challenge, every community has like sort of their own little networks that are popping up. Literally, neighbors are creating groups among each others. Black associations are creating groups. There's bigger groups that are that have their networks. This is all done through like Signal Chat or WhatsApp or any of those, or even text threads, right? We're just texting people and letting them know where ICE is. So, what I would say, if someone is starting from zero and doesn't know how to get involved, reach out on social media. You could reach out to folks in your community that you see that are advocating, that are showing up to protests, that are going down to 26 Federal Plaza. Reach out to nonprofit organizations. Uptown, we have, for example, the Coalition for Immigrant Rights, which is the rebrand of the Northern Manhattan Coalition for Immigrant Rights. We have NIMIC. We have the Dominican Women's Development Center. We have a bunch of nonprofits, the People's Theater Project, that are immigrant-led and immigrant-centered. Reach out to those. Sometimes, I know that there's some churches of worship that are also creating them. So if you're part of a civic association, the community board, just get involved with a neighbor that looks like they're active, and most people can plug you in. And if in doubt, reach out to me, and I can certainly do that as well.
Yeah, and also as an individual, to anybody who's watching, and you have a network of people, you yourself can be a leader and create that type of network yourself. You can use the tools like the council member said, like WhatsApp and things like that, and create your own, because those are all very powerful. And then you can find ways to link up with the community organizations that are doing this. So thank you very much. I do have a question. We just saw something that this administration has been doing and is now like augmenting, which is very important to me. And me and Led sometimes joke about the way that we're going to be broadcasting from Guantanamo one day, but that joke got pretty serious over the weekend when Don Lemon was arrested for documenting a protest in Minneapolis. You yourself have a very strong track record of protecting journalists. I know that you were a key person in terms of protecting the Daily News when their union was under attack. Are there any plans for the city council to take a look at the protections of journalists and people, especially like independent journalists like me and like Led, who are doing this on our own volition, on our own dime? We don't have a lot of money. So if we get sued, or if somebody tries to take us to jail, we'd be very vulnerable. We feel that very strongly, even though we will continue to do this work as much as we have been, and even more. So, what kind of discussions, if any, have there been at the city council and in general about protections for journalism?
Yeah, like you said, last year when I was a civil service and labor chair, I focused a lot on protecting media, specifically during the daily news struggle with ratifying work contracts, because that's what it was about making sure that freelancers, making sure that journalists have the ability to speak freely. We call it the sixth estate, right? If the press isn't free, we know what happens. That is a sure sign that authoritarianism is in play. And so we want to make sure that journalists are able to continue to do their work. I think that this is why it's important that we do the link ups that we do when we talk, because as you're speaking, I'm thinking of ways that we can do that. As the technology chair, One of the agencies that I now have the privilege of oversight over is MOM. We got a Dominicano, who's the new commissioner of MOM,
Yes.
Rafael Espinal, my friend, and I wish him the best. So MOM is actually the agency that gives the press passes to the press. And so as you're speaking, I'm thinking of ways that we can leverage, the oversight powers of the committee in order to do some of that real granular work of protecting people. At the very least, we know that that agency should have a list of all the press, right? And maybe there's some trainings, and maybe there's some roundtables that we can start to hold in order to make sure that the press is able to do their job. For me, when Don Lemon was arrested, I immediately put out a statement. I immediately said something. And I think that that's just as important for us to be using our platforms and our voices to call it out, right? It's like that, they say, like, they came for him today, tomorrow they'll come for us. So it's important for us to model that solidarity. And so that's what we've been doing. I think there's way more to do, and I'm looking forward to working with you all to try and get some of those conversations going for sure.
That's awesome. And as a ex-president of the New York chapter of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, I'm sure that I can also be a good liaison into that community so that we can augment that discussion amongst practitioners of journalism and make sure that they understand, as journalists and independent journalists, and also journalists who are working in traditional media, what their rights are and how they can protect themselves. So I thank you for always having journalism and journalists in your mind. It's so important, especially at a time like this. So
for sure, that's how we protect democracy.
And Carmen, just to switch it up a little bit, Mayor Mamdani just recently announced there was like a $12 billion hole in the budget because of Mayor Adams going to having hookah every day. But
hey, we're not gonna knock the hookah now, but he definitely
he was outside. He was outside every day. Can you explain a little further? So I think I had a hard time understanding what happened. Why is there a $12 billion hole in the budget?
Look, I think that anytime the problem will continue, right? Anytime you have an executive and you have the city council, there's a two-way negotiation that happens in order to ensure that we have a balanced or a so-called balanced budget. One of the things that we saw happen under Eric Adams, that, I've been in government now for 2 decades. I'm not aging myself, but we're getting up there. And 9 years as an elected official. And I think that with Eric Adams, this was the first time that we kind of saw this type of action where we would pass a budget. He would try in the negotiations with the council to say we're not funding libraries, and we'd get stuck on the library funding, and we'd have to fight him back, and then we'd get some money reinstated for the library budget, and then we'd move on to something else. And he would, as the main negotiator of the city budget, hold on some things and say, we're not going to do this, we're cutting here. And then after the budget passed, after there was a negotiated position, after the council votes for the budget, Eric would come and reinstate monies for certain projects, for certain things, basically unilaterally. And so I think that between that and some of the mismanagement that we've heard, obviously his administration had a lot of corruption in it. We're going to call it what it was. There was a lot of pet projects and pet things that got priority. Those things add up. And I think that it's important for us to understand that every year we see holes in the budget. I think that what Mayor Mamdani wanted to highlight, and I think that it was a smart political move on his end as well, is that he's inheriting this $12 million hole. And he wanted to make that clear because it means that as we go into budget negotiations starting in February, we're going to have to find that money to plug those holes. And that means that there's going to be certain programs that are not going to get the amount of money that they needed, right? You couple that with what's happening on the federal government level, where the Trump administration has already threatened to take certain funding away from sanctuary cities or cities who say they're going to remain sanctuary cities. And there is a fiscal crisis that is looming. It is the job of the mayor and the city council, however, to make sure that we're like doing our due diligence when it comes to balancing that budget, and the most vulnerable New Yorkers are not the ones who feel it the most. And that's what we're focusing on right now. I am working with my colleagues in the Progressive Caucus, and we're going to be putting together a working group to make sure that we go up to Albany and that we get some of that tax the rich stuff that we need. And we know that the governor has been talking about taxing the rich and not being all the way on board with all of the tax increases. But I think that this is a moment where the fiscal crisis that looms dictates that we should be responsible and looking at creative ways to make sure that we're bringing that money back into communities that most need it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think it's so important. And I think that you've been somebody who's really looking out for our community. And on that note, I wanted to hear a little bit from you about some of the wins that you see coming down the pike. I know that there's been some wins in terms of money for parks in the neighborhood, especially I believe Gorman Park is something that is on a lot of people's minds. And
Yeah.
I'd like to understand where that stands. And just for those who are just joining us right now, we're talking to District 10 Representative Carmen de la Rosa. She is our city council representative here in Inwood and Washington Heights. So yeah, some of the wins and talking a little bit about some of the parks, particularly Gorman Park. If you could give us an update on what's going on there.
For sure. So all of these updates, are reflective of the last budget that we passed. Obviously, we have a new budget that we start to negotiate in February and passes in June, at the end of June. But we have had some wins due to the advocacy of the community and also us working together to make sure that the needs of the community are at the forefront of the work that we're doing in the city council. So, Gorman Park is that little park that is right next to the 191st one train station, the tunnel, which is a pet project of mine as well, and across the street from the Ortiz Funeral Home, for those that are geographically getting acquainted with that area. And so that park actually has had a history of needs that have been neglected for many, many years before I became the council member, right? At some point, a retaining wall within that park began to deteriorate. And retaining walls, are structural. And that means that once that happened, Gorman Park was basically condemned and no one was allowed to go inside the park and sort of, it was a throughway. It used to get people from Broadway to Wadsworth. And so no one's able to traverse the park right now. And so when we started having conversations with the Parks Department about Amelia Gorman Park, they told us it's going to take $20 million in order to get this project funded and completed. Just for a sense of context, every council member gets $5 million, $5 million for the whole district. So I would have needed 4 years of giving all my capital funds for Amelia Gorman Park to be fixed. And so that number includes the work that needs to be done in order to remediate the wall, as well as the safety precautions in order for the workers to traverse the park as it is. Last year in the budget, we were able to secure $3 million to begin sort of working through a first phase of cleanup and accessibility and rehabilitation at Amelia Gorman Park. The goal is to take this park in phases to make it so that people have access to it first, and then begin to work on completely rehabilitating, redoing, making it nice, and making it safe. One of the reasons why this park is a priority for me is because, as you all know, unhoused people in our community, unfortunately, they have been seen congregating there. We've seen the use of needles, syringes along that park for many, many years. And when you don't give TLC to our public spaces, they become very dilapidated and they become places that are unsafe for our community. We want people to be able to enjoy it. And, we are grateful that Uptown, we have so many great parks. I also was able to bring $1.3 million for creating a dog run at Fort Tryon Park. That is much needed. We're working on redoing the entrance of J. Hood Wright Park. There's some accessibility needs there and some ramps that need to be built. So that was $1.5 million. We're continuing to invest in our historic houses. The Morris Jumel Mansion is a mansion that is, symbolic of the Uptown story. And so we've been able to, in phases, working with then Borough President Mark Levine, bring some funding to actually redo the Morris Jumel mansion on the outside, the structural. And this year we were able to bring in $550,000 for the mansion. And then obviously, like, our public schools, we have some of the oldest school buildings in the district, and I really do focus the capital funding from the district on parks projects and schools. And so all the schools got technology upgrades, they got auditorium upgrades, and we were able to bring $3.4 million for that.
Speaking of Gorman Park, I grew up like down the block from that park. When I was a kid, we used to call it the Devil's Cave.
Yeah.
Because it was a really dangerous park, and it had like a little bit of a rebirth for a little bit, but it's back to where it's at. First of all, I want to thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. What are some of your priorities in the coming year?
Yeah. So I'm doing a few things. One, we have this co-governance project that we've been trying to get off the ground. And we're finally at a place where we have the structure. And so we're going to be publicly launching that and starting to work in a co-governance way with a District 10 action plan that we hope to launch in the spring. That basically is going to talk about all those areas of needs that our community has within District 10. The goal is that not only on the council side we're able to make a difference, but that city, state, and federal are working in the council district to make sure that those needs are addressed. As technology chair, I'm excited. We're going to be bringing some tech companies to visit some of our schools uptown. I want to make sure that, technology is one of those issues where we need to use technology responsible, but there is so much opportunity there. So I want to be able to leverage some of the resources that come with being technology chair to bring capacity building to some of our nonprofits uptown. And we want to do roundtables across the city to talk about access to technology and put those roundtables in places where technology is not really a conversation that we're having. Some communities get pigeonholed into just talking about services. Services are important, but how do we leverage opportunity? And so we want to do that with the technology committee. We're also working on making sure that we continue to fund our schools and our parks. So we'll be hosting another round of town halls that we do in the winter and spring. And then in the summer, we do our pop-ups. Carmen listens. So we'll be coming to blocks around the district to make sure that we're listening to constituents and bringing resources at the same time. And I'm also working on a series of meetings that we're calling the State of Nonprofits in Upper Manhattan. One of the things that I'm so focused on is making sure that our nonprofit sector uptown is fortified, that our legacy organizations don't disappear. And so we're going to be doing some workshops and trainings with our nonprofits. And obviously, last but not least, our small businesses. We're working on the creation of a new bid from 159th Street to 177th Street. And we're also working with the Chamber of Commerce to bring some much needed support to our uptown small businesses.
That's incredible. That's really great. And I want to be sure that me and Led are involved in the technology discussions. We have ambitions up here for a uptown digital media community center, something that we would like to create. And I'm in the process of making sure that Uptown Voices is part of the nonprofit world. So I'm making moves in that. So I really look forward to having you on the technology commission at the city council. It's a wonderful placement. I think it's wonderful that you're there, and thank you so much for joining us. It's 10:28. I think we have a couple more minutes with you. I just wanted to bring something up that was a little bit concerning with the cold. That something that I learned was that there's only 2 warming centers per borough. In New York City. So when temperatures get very, very cold, the only warming centers are in Midtown and then one in downtown when you're talking about Manhattan. I'm sorry that we saw, I think the number now is 14 deaths because of the cold. I would like to know, is there any discussion about maybe expanding warming centers so that the next time temperatures become so cold, people don't suffer as much? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Go ahead.
And is there any consideration for perhaps, like city parks, rec centers, gyms, things like that to be opened up when temperatures get so cold for so long?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say that I did reach out to the city about the warming centers and the possibility of expanding. I think that the responses that we're getting from the city, which makes sense, is that the warming center locations were the warming center locations that they were able to quickly put together. We've requested that Uptown be considered as one of those locations, and I'm sure we will have that conversation going forward as the winter weather continues. But the response is that every city shelter in the city of New York during the storm also became a walk-in center. So, for example, we have a shelter on 168th Street. We have a shelter on 179th Street. Those shelters, for the remaining winter days where we have cold blues, the eligibility requirements to get a shelter placement were significantly reduced. So where people, when they want to get into shelter, have to go downtown and register at the PATH office, and then they get placed in a shelter, you could literally walk into any of those shelters and get shelter from the cold weather and from the conditions. We also made sure during the storm, and it was something that I was very adamant about, was that we were checking our train stations and making sure that the people who we know are using our train stations as homes, unfortunately, were getting the services that they needed. And so we did have, for me, for Uptown, I did have sort of this network of folks that I'm working with between the MTA, BRC, the DOT, Department of Social Services. We kind of got on a call and we're talking about the pressure points Uptown where we know unhoused people tend to congregate. And so we made sure that we had people out there looking and talking to folks and offering services. And as you know, the mayor announced that forced removals were a last resort option. But we are having the conversation as the entire city begins to debrief the services that happened during the storm. For example, I think that clearing of our bus shelters could have been done in a faster way. I still am seeing piles of snow in some bus shelters. So that's something that we need to address. Also, our crosswalks, right? We have so many people in our community that are disabled, that are in walkers, that have strollers, and our crosswalks were very hard to access. So the day after the storm, I walked around the district and I actually sent some locations and said, hey, we need reinforcements here. So that type of debrief is happening. We're going to continue to work with the city to make sure that Uptown gets its fair share. And that's my responsibility. And I'm committed to that. So we're going to keep talking to them about the possibility of having more warming centers. In the same way we have cooling centers in the summer. Our libraries
Exactly.
become cooling centers and all of that.
Well, Carmen, thank you for being so responsive to the community, and thank you for fighting a good fight with us. And you have open doors here, so whenever you want, you can come on, and we have this this brief kind of catch up. I think it's important for the people of this community. So thank you for everything you do. Appreciate
For sure. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's always a dope time talking to both of you, seeing you all around the community. And I'm so grateful for the platform and for the friendship as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're
Talk to you
welcome
soon.
here anytime, and we're here for you. We're here for the community. We're all about getting people connected, making sure that folks are not just hearing but also getting activated and taking part in their own community. And I think that's a good segue for our next guest, who is Liz Ritter. Liz Ritter is she's part of the community board for council of the community board for parks and culture. Although she's here as a neighbor more than anything. She's not speaking for the community board. She's speaking for herself, but she's been a key person for many years here, making sure that the people's voices are being heard from the community board level. So thank you, Liz, for joining us. And today I think is very important because for the folks who live near the west side of Washington Heights in the 180s, we've got a park here right next to the entrance to the George Washington Bridge. That is a beautiful little pocket park. It's intended for children, but But for the last, oh gosh, I don't know, is it like 5 years? It has been closed, and Liz Ritter has been one of the key voices trying to make sure that this park, which is so precious to the community, is reopened. So Liz, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about this park, and update us on what the situation is there.
Well, thanks for having me on. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Because I can't
You,
tell from my screen.
yeah, we can hear you and we can see you, Liz.
Fantastic. So, and also thank you for that disclaimer because I am not speaking for the community board, but obviously my 29-year membership on the board is a big part of my activism in this community. The Dolphin
You-
Park is this wonderful, wonderful, just really sweet, very special little space that was created by the Port Authority as a gift to the community at the urging, some might say dragging, of Jean Lee Poggi, who is no longer with us, but at the time was the founder and the executive director of the West 181st Street Beautification Project. They are called that because she was for many years a steward of the Step Street on that connects Pinehurst Avenue. It's the step extension of Pinehurst Avenue from where it ends to 181st Street, and there are terraced gardens on either side. And part of what she was doing with those gardens was bringing people, members of the community, particularly children from the community, into civic engagement and public works and beautification as a way of getting them onto the right path of like working in community with each other for something that made the community a better place. She saw two things happening at that area of Cabrini Boulevard between 181st and 180th Street. One was a lot of drug dealing, and a lot of kids getting pulled into that. This would be in the 90s. A lot of kids getting pulled into like drug running, um, and supporting that economy. She also saw uh, an abandoned vacant lot that was part of the adjacent right of way of the GW Bridge on ramp. And in her mind, she thought, wouldn't it be great if this were a public park, a little toddler playground where we could have a safe space for children to play and also a place to bring older children and teenagers into stewardship of a public area and supervision of small children. Brilliant, brilliant. And she, um iron fist in velvet glove, the Port Authority, she shamed them into doing the right thing. It was a beautiful thing to watch. And she was a Buddhist. So she was really very good at very gently explaining to people why her path was the right way. So fast forward a bunch of years later, and she's continually making sure the Port Authority is funding this thing and maintaining this thing, and that our state elected officials are continuing to uh, make sure the Port Authority does the right thing. Um, and then, of course, the Port Authority has this, don't quote me on it, I want to say $80 billion 10-year program to fix the bridge, open up that wonderful bike path. So they closed the park while they were doing that construction. COVID happened. Jean Lee died. The 181st Street beautification project is not in the same structure that it is now. And so the Port Authority did not reopen the park. They maintained it, but they did not reopen it. So now we have a whole bunch of people who want to see it reopened. The Port Authority had been waiting for a nonprofit community partner to step in the same way that Jean Lee had done and that the beautification project had done. I don't know that that is necessary for the reopening of the park. it's probably an important part of keeping the park sweet the way it was before. But at this point, through a lot of activism, a lot of back channeling, a lot of elected officials talking to their connections at the Port Authority, a lot of guys like Octavio really goading public opinion to the right place. The Port Authority is on record as committing to reopening the park in the spring. So that's where
That's
we're at. That's a
amazing.
really long answer to a short question.
No, it's great. It's really good. And what I know is that Community Board 12 has passed a resolution. Am I correct? That
Yes.
they're going to distribute to the elected officials, both our state electeds, our city electeds, because this is a very sort of like complicated little part of city government. The
Mhm.
Port Authority is not a city uh, agency. It's not exactly a state agency. Like, for example, it's not a New York state agency. It's this hybrid New York and New Jersey agency. But that allowed things to fall through the cracks. And we have been here kind of in the past where we've been very excited that there's going to be a date that when the park is going to open, only to be sort of let down when it doesn't open. So what I appreciate about the community board is that they are asking for our electeds to think out of the box and to have some accountability for Port Authority to make sure that this actually does happen. Do you see that as a has this resolution been distributed yet? And what do you know if you could speak to that?
Um, yeah. So I'm not watching videos. I have two screens, and one of them has the text of the resolution that the board passed last week, which we passed, by the way, unanimously. So there was everybody is in agreement. So there were some edits to the resolution. I sent that to the office on Friday. I do not know if it has been sent out yet. Maybe it has. Maybe it won't go out until this week. There's a lot going on in the office,
Yeah, yeah.
and we are between district managers. Our new district manager hasn't started yet, so there's two people in the office kind of holding it down. But the reso gives some history that I sort of recapped at the beginning of this segment, and it calls on the agency, on the Port Authority. And by the way, you're right. It's not an agency, it's an authority. Authorities run a little bit differently than agencies. I've often said I have an authority problem, and I find that a lot of my government beefs are with the Port Authority, the Transit Authority, the School Construction Authority, the Housing Authority. Totally an authority problem, but I digress. Um, so we're calling on all of our elected officials to continue to work with each other and with the Port Authority, which is a little redundant because frankly they've all stepped up. Al Taylor and Manny de los Santos have stepped up. Adriano Espaillat, who is a federal official but has a long history with with the Port Authority and with the Dolphin Park from back when he was a state senator. Robert Jackson, they've all stepped up. There was a little conversation about it at a town hall on Thursday that was sponsored by Al Taylor. And we were joined by Robert Jackson. They both restated their commitment to the park. So I think we do have all of our electeds on our side. One of the things that I want to make clear, and the resolution doesn't address this by design, is that this is the Port Authority's property. It is not New York City Parks Department property. So it's not going to be maintained by New York City Parks. It's not budgeted for by New York City Parks. And Assemblymember Councilwoman De La Rosa has been a strong advocate for this park, but it's a state thing, not a city thing. So, we always have to be mindful of which branch of government is responsible for the thing that we're complaining about or advocating for. This is a state thing, so we want to lean mostly on our state senator and our state assembly member. But the community board has requested that, consistent with the Port Authority's commitments, that they keep that commitment to open up in the spring, that they continue to update us as to what's going on. We would love for them to work with us to help fund a community partner who would provide some of that enhanced programming that the Beautification Project used to do. But the reopening of the park is not contingent on finding such an organization. And lastly, just as an aside, we would love for the Port Authority to rename this park in Jean Lee's memory.
That's amazing. This is a small park, but a big victory. And thank you for what you're doing. But again, one of the things is also, how do you keep it from, there's a lot of intravenous drug users because of, this whole corridor. How do you keep that from kind of like, defiling that little park?
Well, speaking personally, I think that's part of why, part of what Jean Lee's model really made work was that park was locked, and then it was opened when it was staffed. So unlike other parks where, it's open during the day and people do whatever they do, this was only open when there were adults and lots of children and teens supervising and, dedicated programming. So there just wasn't really the opportunity for people to go and use or drink or publicly defile or behave inappropriately in a way that just is not what we should be doing around very small children. So I think that was the thinking that drove wanting to find a community partner to help provide some of that augmented programming. The other part that keeps it safe is, I want to go back to something that Carmen said when she was on in the earlier segment. She said, when you don't give TLC to public spaces, they become dilapidated. And she was speaking in the context of financial TLC and capital funding that her office provides. But she and all of our elected officials and all of the people who live near the park, who have businesses near the park, they're providing the TLC, the eyes and ears, the, hey, what are you doing? Don't do that. Let me go out there with a trash grabber and pick up some, things that are flying around on the sidewalk out in front of it. We as a community, the them that takes care of these things is us. The them is us. And
yeah. And there's,
I just want to say real quick. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just want to say that area is so interesting, right? Because you're so right about what you're saying, that like we take care of that area, right? Because it's interesting on when you're looking at it, if you're looking at the Norfolk, right? And on the side where the park is, there's always like a group of like older ladies and older men, and they're drinking alcohol, but they're having a good time. They make sure they clean up, right? They have the music blasting, but it keeps it from other things happening there. And on the other side of the Norfolk, right there, is where you have like a lot of like a little community of like Latino bike riders, right? And you're right, like that keeps that park from going, from going the wrong way. So you're 100% right about that. Go ahead, Octavio.
No, I was just going to say, and there is a community group that's been forming. It's very grassroots, Friends of Dolphin Park. Maybe with the help of the Port Authority, there could be funding so that the Friends of Dolphin Park might be able to become a 501c3 and an official kind of thing. But I know that there's a lot of people on that chat and in that group that are very interested in participating. So the fact that there is a lot of community support for this little park, and I think that if it were to be reopened and there was life there again, we would see a lot of that come to life as well. It would be a
Yeah.
net positive for the neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, money is a factor here, but what constitutes a little bit of money or a lot of money really depends on who you're asking. So the Port Authority is an enormous, enormous agency with a huge budget. So what for them is like not even pocket change, but the pennies
Yeah,
that you throw on the ground, not the,
it's the lint in their pocket.
yeah, it's really the lint in their pocket. That very small amount of money directed to a nonprofit organization once it's founded, or if there's an existing one that's interested in some stewardship of the park, pays for coloring books and crayons and little stipends to kids to babysit other kids or read them stories or whatever. I mean, whatever the programming is, $5,000-$10,000 is a lot of money to a small organization that's entirely volunteer run and is just buying like the stuff and providing small stipends, whereas it's nothing to a big agency. And I imagine there are, as in the days of the beautification project, there are neighbors such as ourselves who are happy to contribute 10, 20, 100 bucks to an organization that's doing this work. So I don't think money is the primary obstacle. I think um, starting an organization and keeping an organization going is a lot of like committed work. And I think we're just about there. Um, but you know, it's a lot of work. And I think that if we have buy-in from the Port Authority, the support of our electeds, the collective support of a community, I think we can get there.
Definitely. And speaking of volunteers, I just wanted to thank you, Liz, and I want to thank all of your colleagues at the community board, because one thing that folks may not know is that the community board is run by volunteers. Everybody there has their day job or their day life, and then they go and they take care of business after hours, making
Mhm.
sure that the community's voice is being represented, advocated for, and there, so that there's accountability for what happens in our neighborhoods, whether it be parks, whether it be transportation, whether it be homes, whether it be public safety. So I want to thank you for
Yeah.
being here, and I want to thank you for your volunteering and your citizenship. And I encourage all of our viewers. This is one thing that I encourage, me and Led encourage on every episode, is like, get involved in your community. And one great place to do that is at the very granular level at the community board. Even if you're not going to be a member, attend some of the meetings, whether it be virtual or in person. In person is better. I'll take it from me. It goes a long way when they see you in person. But yeah, they have all the meetings are available on Zoom, on YouTube. So please be informed, stay alert, especially now as our communities are being attacked by our own government. It's so important that our citizens stay informed and stay alert. It's not just about immigration; that's a huge issue. But our funding is being cut from the federal level. Our education is being threatened from a federal level. So it all starts on the local level by participating and being a voice, and then it trickles up. So thank you, Liz.
I want to say just give a thank you for the plug for the community board. I do want to say that we have, just in case people are wondering, like, what exactly do? We have an advisory role. We don't have power, but we don't have a lot of authority, but we do have soft power, bringing people together to have conversations like the organic conversation that happened around the Dolphin Park that moves people into action. We have a Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee, aging, licensing that takes care of bars, restaurants, taxis, and cannabis shops, traffic and transportation, housing and human services, youth and education, land use, health and environment, public safety, and then we have an executive committee that consists of the 6 officers of the board and all of the chairs of the committees. Applications for community board membership are open. If you go to nyc.gov and go down to the borough president, the Manhattan Borough President's link, you can go to Brad Hoylman's Siegel's office link, and then there should be a link there to learn more about community boards and to join a community board. And yes, you are 100% correct that decisions are made by the people who show up. And while I think I can comfortably speak for my fellow community board members that we do our best to represent not only our own perspectives, but the things that we hear as we're out and about in the community. We also need folks to just come to the meetings. There's no way you're not going to be interested in something. And it's great human theater, and it's democracy at the most local level. And I'm just, can you see my mug?
I see it, yes.
We the people.
Constitution, we the people. That's what it's about.
And Liz, thank you so much. And you really do be out and about. I run into you everywhere. I run into you at 181 Cabrini. I run into you in our massage place that my wife and I go to like weekly on Dykeman. So thank you for being, this kind of person that just really does for others. So thank you so much, Liz. And you can come back anytime soon as well. So you got open doors here as well. Thank you.
Right on. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Liz.
You got it.
All right, Led. So the conversation continues. Liz, thank you very much. We're about to hit the hour and 5 minutes, so we are going to continue chatting. Instagram is going to shut us down because it only gives us about an hour. I've put up the link for our YouTube page. That's where you can go and continue the conversation with us. It's youtube.com/@Uptown Collective. And while you're there, please subscribe. That's where we're going to be continuing this conversation from 11 on. But Led, thank you. Thank you again. How are you feeling after that?
It feels good. No, it feels great. We had like two important guests, and it's important that we have these conversations on a weekly basis. Shout out to everyone on tuning in. And like Octavio said, go, we're gonna keep talking. So, make sure you hit up the YouTube. And there's a lot to talk about still. You know what I mean? Like, it's funny because I went with the wife on Thursday to see a movie called Steal This Story, Please. It is the story of Democracy Now! And I think I need, Democracy Now! Needs like a Uptown Voices PSA. Democracy Now! Is the most important news show ever. It comes on at 8 o'clock every weekday, Monday through Friday, and it's Amy Goodman as well as Juan Gonzalez and Nermi Sheikh. They're the anchors. But again, it is the most important news source in the world, and it's gonna be 30 years this April. And the movie's gonna come out in April, but I got to see it, so it's in the film circuit run. But again, like it's funny. A few years ago, my wife said she got us tickets to go see Amy Goodman at I think the theater of the museum of the city of New York. And I remember I told my wife that morning, I said, "Listen, don't get mad, but when I see Amy, I'm gonna tell her I love her." You know what I mean? And I did. And Amy Goodman is just such a hero to journalism, for Americans, and the movie really illustrates that, right? Like she talked about, for example, East Timor, and Indonesia had been in there like 17 years, just basically pillaging and oppressing those people in East Timor, and the mainstream press did not cover it for 17 years, and then Amy went there with Alan Nern, and they got beat up by the Indonesian military, and all of a sudden it became this cause, and she put it on the national radar. There was also a story before Democracy Now! When she was working at WBAI, and there was a black man who was arrested in the 30s because the Klan came to his house and he killed 2 Klan members, and he was given like life sentence, and he was languishing there until Amy put it on the air, and the man ended up being freed, and he went on the show and spoke to her, and he cried. And again, this is so important as we enter this phase of authoritarianism, that we stay informed. So I just gotta say, Democracy Now! Is the most important show to watch every day, Monday through Friday, 8 o'clock. It goes on live at 8 o'clock, but you could always watch it on their YouTube or on their website. So democracynow.org is super important, and I just want to keep emphasizing that. I watch it every day. If I miss it, I go back and watch it. Super important.
Yeah. Me and my wife Kathy are fans. Kathy is actually the biggest fan in the house. I mean, I'm a big fan, but Kathy watches it every day as well. And we were lucky enough this past summer, we went to Maria Hinojosa's birthday party. Maria Hinojosa is a luminary Latina journalist. She used to live in Washington Heights. She lives in the Upper West Side now. She operates out of Harlem. And she had Amy Goodman at her party. So we actually sat with Amy Goodman for a while at her table with her dog. She was the sweetest, most down-to-earth person.
Sasu's Ami's dog.
it was really, really great. We even got our selfie with her and all that good stuff. But it's when you talk about independent journalism, Democracy Now! Is the original gangster independent journalism. We're doing our thing here, trying to bring independent journalism to Uptown. And we're doing it little by little, one step at a time, and we're going to keep expanding our efforts. But Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! Definitely has been doing it for a minute, and it's so important. And thank you for bringing that up to our audience. If you're not watching it, please tune in. You'll learn a thing or two, because she covers topics that are not often covered by traditional media like East Timor and other places that you don't realize there's a lot happening in this world beyond what you're seeing on the traditional media.
So, and then we only got like 2 minutes left on this IG live. So make sure you go to our YouTube channel. You could go to the link in bio on the Uptown Collective, because we got a lot to talk about still. You know what I mean? I want to talk about Latinos for Trump again, right? Like, so there's a lot to talk about. I want to say this about Latinos for Trump. I think Latinos for Trump has to be one of the stupidest things in history, right? It's like Jews for Hitler. It's like chicken for McNuggets, right? It is the stupidest thing in history.
And, cockroaches for Raid.
Right, exactly. You know what I mean? It's one of those dumbest things that have ever transpired. And I think now, we're feeling the effects of it, and I will vote for Donald Trump, right? Like that fucking really silly shit. You know what I mean? It's there's a guy I saw a Cuban guy who had a Trump tattoo on his neck, right? A Trump. He took a huge. Well, he just got deported to Cuba, and he's gonna be
get the hell out of it with the tattoo,
with a fucking tattoo of Trump in Cuba, right? So it's like. I think, again, back to how stupid it was. It's I think the first law of nature is self-preservation, right? So I'm so disappointed, that we did this to ourselves, right? We chose this, and that's what we're really bothered. But I'm also heartened by the fact that, people are regretting now. That regret is starting to set in. People are finally starting to wake up. And I think that's a good thing. And like I said before, I'm not closing the doors to anyone that was a Trump supporter. But again, I'm just not trusting your judgment. You know what I mean? Your judgment was off. You know what I mean?
You know what I got to say, though? And I said this the other day, and I'm going to say it again. Led, you have been on point and right about all of this stuff that's been going on. People, I think, originally in the beginning of this administration thought, oh, it's not going to be so bad. Oh, it's not going to happen to me. Especially Latinos for Trump. They're like, oh, this is happening to those other people. I'm Cuban, so I'm safe, or, I've been in this country for 20 years, so I'm safe. It's those other people. It's those other people. I think I saw something that you posted about people with green cards, how they see themselves versus people without it. That was hilarious. But it's so true. People think, oh, I'm above this. I'm safe. And guess what? It's coming around and you're not safe. And guess what? Nobody is safe. It doesn't it doesn't even matter if you're beige, you know, it doesn't even matter if you're white. It doesn't even matter if you're black. It's anybody who stands up to the regime is fair game. And we've seen it now with the tragic consequence of people being murdered on the street by their own freaking government. It's if you don't, you know, if you're somebody who's right wing, who's on the right wing, and you're not shocked by what you're seeing on the streets of America today, then you are living in a delusional state of mind, because all those things that the right wing supposedly stands for, freedom of expression, freedom to bear arms, freedom, all these things that they say that they are for, they're seeing them being infringed upon, and they're not up in arms, then you are deluded.
Yeah, and you're not safe in your churches. You're not safe in your schools. You're not safe in hospitals. No one is safe. You're not safe if you're undocumented, if you have some type of status, or if you're a citizen, right? And you're not safe if you're a child. Look at Liam Ramos, right? Like the kid is 5 years old. You know what I mean? And he's basically despondent, right? Like he's uncommunicative. He's a little kid with all this energy. And when they went to visit him not too long ago, he slept the whole time. This is a crime against humanity, and I think that we're finally waking up, and I think it's important to understand history, because I think that's the big problem, right? Like, unfortunately, too many Latinos don't have a sense of history of this country. They don't know what's happened in this country, right? And like, for example, there's a film on Netflix that I saw with the entire family. It's actually a documentary series. I think it's The Rise of Hitler and the Nazis. I'm not sure the exact name, but it's important to watch, because you see how Hitler went, you know, to capitalize on a society that was somewhat liberal, somewhat progressive, but just kind of like you know, not being vigilant, and how quickly you know, he took over and rammed his horrible ideas down their throat. But another thing that people want, you know, sometimes people think, oh, the Nazis, you know, that it's foreign, but actually the Nazis got many of their ideas from America, right? The genocide, the genocide of the Native Americans, the basically apartheid of Black Americans, all those things come into play. And so, you know, when people say it can't happen here, it's had always happened here. It has always been fascism for people of color. It's now just coming for everyone. And someone said, you know, it's people are being niggerized, right? The whole country is being niggerized. And I can say that I'm a Black person before you get upset. You know what I mean? But not you, Octavio, but other people. But that's what's happening. It's like everyone the system is showing its true face. And we have to, now more than ever, solidarity is super important, and understanding history, understanding that these things can happen here, and also that the nonsense, the oppression and the bad faith politics that we exported abroad, right? The installation of dictators, the completely destroying of economies. We did that around. I don't even want to say we. America did that around the world, and now it's coming back here. And we're living in really perilous times.
Can you unpack a little bit what that means? What you were describing or just a second ago, what you were talking about, that with that word that I don't like to say. What does that mean that we're being?
Well, what I'm saying is that, like, for so long, you know, Black and brown people have felt the impacts of Americanism. We felt it, and we've been in the front lines, right? You know, the prisons are full of us, right? And we could get killed indiscriminately any day. You know what I mean? Like how many people, George, feel like you start forgetting the names of black people that have been killed by the police, right? But we've entered a new phase of this, right? I've always felt that the system really never cared about white people either. It doesn't care about any of us. It cares about profit and control. And I think that's becoming obvious, right? It's becoming obvious. They killed two white American citizens, like within weeks of each other, right? And one was, it was interesting. They're both 37 years old, but they were young, idealistic people looking out for their community, right? And what's interesting with Alex Preddy, he actually had an encounter with them a week before where they broke his ribs, right? So if you look at it that way, he was already being followed, right? They knew who he was. And to me, it seems more like an assassination than something that just kind of transpired, right? He was on their radar, and they got rid of him. But what I'm trying to say is, like, and they were called domestic terrorists, right? So it just shows you that this kind of thing is spreading. And also they have apps now where they take a picture of you, right? And not only are you in the database, right? But I saw a story today actually where a woman, she had like an encounter because she was following them. They said, "Don't unfollow me," and they took a picture. Within a few days, she got a letter saying that the TSA like early screening thing was canceled, right? So it's not theoretical anymore. Like the government
and also the investigations into what's going on are being swept under the table, something that our community also understands very well, that you get accused of something and then it's just true, they don't get investigated. And that's what they're trying to do with both of these people who the government is apparently opening an investigation against, in the Preddy situation. But in the good situation, I don't know that investigation has gone anywhere. I think we saw in both cases that before there was any kind of investigation, the government was already saying what had happened, right? There was no investigation. There was no due process. Kristi Noem and the rest of her ghouls were out there spreading lies and misinformation. And if it wasn't for our cell phone cameras that were capturing all of this, most of Americans would have believed them, because most Americans think that their government speaks truthfully. And maybe it did in the past, but as people of color know, that's not the case. So think about the times when so many African Americans were complaining about being brutalized by police after being pulled over for having a light out or for speeding. It was only with the prevalence of phones, smartphones with cameras in them, that we started to see that this was actually true. This was actually happening. But unless we had that evidence, most people in America weren't going to believe that individual, and they would believe the government's story. So now we're seeing that this government definitely is lying to us, that they are not investigating. And I think, again, this should be a wake-up call for people to get involved and to stand up, because it's just not right. And unless we do stand up, it's going to keep happening. We cannot afford to sit on the sidelines anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I saw a thing on Instagram that said, no one thought the revolution would start in Minnesota except for Prince. And I think that's funny, in a sense, because it does feel really true. Minnesota and the way Minnesotans have looked out for one another, right? And that's that's why I think that like Renee Good and Alex Preddy should be like almost like revered in that sense, right? Because they didn't say, "Hey, I'm white, this doesn't concern me." They said, "No, I'm white and I care about this country and I need to change things. I need to protect my neighbors." So I want to shout out everyone in Minnesota who's really really pushed the envelope, really showed us what is happening in this country. I saw a thing today that said Trump orders federal agents to stay away from protests in Democrat cities. I think that's solely because of what happened in Minnesota. That doesn't mean that they're gonna stop doing whatever they're gonna do. They're gonna do, what they do. But again, I think it's a big victory, and I think something that needs to be applauded. I think it's super, super important. And so thank you to Minnesota. Thank you for leading the way and showing us what can be done and how we do it. And again, I think Los Angeles has been a flashpoint as well. And that's
Chicago.
LA, Chicago and New York. I think New York has been kind of more they've done some public stuff, and I think it backfired tremendously. So it's been a little bit more more measured, but still I think it's important for us to stand together for the onslaught that's got to come.
Yeah, this is not over. It's clear that they've done something that they are that they got called out on, and they're recognizing it, and they're pulling back a little bit in some areas, but the actual initiatives, the arrests, the going door to door, that's going to continue. In New York, there is New York for All. It's a state bill that looks to protect New Yorkers of all types from ICE and from federal incursion. Even our governor Hochul, who is, although she hasn't fully gotten behind New York for All, she has moved to the left on a lot of issues dealing with immigration, more to the left than she had been previously. So there is a bill in the state assembly, which our district senator Robert Jackson is pushing for. He's going to be on the show, not live, but we're going to be speaking to him this week, and we're going to be publishing that piece on Tuesday. And I'm sure he's going to be speaking about New York for All in that interview, amongst other things. So please tune in on Tuesday when we'll have Robert Jackson for the full hour, talking about his story and his representation uptown, and also how he's going to be, what he's pushing in Albany to protect immigrants and to protect New Yorkers. So we're on top of this. We're gonna keep being on top of this. And our audience, I hope that you will find time to get involved in some way, whether it be through volunteering at a nonprofit in your community, or it be attending a community board, or it be going to a protest. Please do that, because together we are strong. But when it's just one of us, we feel vulnerable. So when you go, so I'll tell you this: I did go to a protest, a No Kings protest. It was me and my wife, and we went not last weekend, but the weekend prior. It was down Fifth Avenue. It was a No Kings, and I went there because I support the movement, to be clear, and also to document the movement. And I will say this: it was a really, really nice experience, and I got to scream and yell and get that anger out in a constructive way. Sometimes we feel so much anger, and we don't have a way to let it out in a way that's not, violent, in a way that's not destructive. Going to a protest is really cathartic. You go out there and you scream and yell your head off, and you tell them what you want to say, and then at the end of the day, you feel better because, number one, your voice literally was heard, and number two, you got a lot of that energy out of your system, so you can think clearly about what's the next thing that you need to do. How is it that you're going to be involved next? So I encourage anybody who's interested to go to a protest peacefully, but to make sure that your voice is heard and scream your head off.
Yeah, I agree. I think, now is the time to coalesce and activate and organize. I think what you spoke about earlier, the arrest of Don Lemon, and there was another black journalist from Atlanta. I think her last name is Fox. She was arrested too. And again, they're just there in Minnesota covering the protests, right? So think about that. And I think he's being charged with something to do with the Ku Klux Klan, which is so ironic that a black gay man, right, is they're using this against him. But I think the regime is flailing, and I think that the end game is to suspend elections. I think that's what they're going for. They don't want the midterms, and I think that's super serious. So we have a few months. These things happen quickly. Trump has he doesn't believe in any. He said like a week or so ago that the only limits are his own morality, right? That's a dictatorship, right? We're basing life on this planet, right? Because the United States is that important on Trump's morality, right? That's a bad place to be. And I think more people are waking up every day and realizing that we're in this really tough place. Like when you're arresting Don Lemon, right? Like Don Lemon, like he's not Che Guevara, right? He's Don Lemon, right? You know what I mean? Like he's just a journalist, and he went to a church, and because the head pastor is like the rector of ICE in that region.
He went to the church because he was covering protesters who were going into the church. He didn't go to the church
to protest.
If those protests, if protesters hadn't gone to the church, Don Lemon wouldn't have barged into that church and asked all those questions. He was covering the protesters. We have to be clear. So, because he was doing journalism, he wasn't doing journalism now, everybody has their bias, and we know, obviously Don Lemon has his advocacy voice, and so do we, but that's clear. But he didn't go to that church of his own volition. He was covering a protest.
And it's interesting that they went after independent journalists, right? Because the more established ones, it will be more of a issue. So he went for like low hanging fruit. But again, that shows you what they're willing to do, right? They are willing to do whatever, and consequences be damned. So I think that his arrest, it should really light a fire under people that this regime is not playing, and it has an end game in mind, and we've already lost so much, and they still want to take away more. I think it's super serious.
Yeah, and one of the ways that people can get involved if they want to protect the election is to volunteer at your polling booth. You can work the polls, and you can be in there, and you can make sure that your own eyes and ears and our own eyes and ears, and that you're making sure that no funny business happens. So, many elections are going to be close, and congressional control could come down to a handful of races. So local disruption in our local elections could impact who gets into the White House. So, that means if you can work the polls, work the polls. That also means go in groups. If you have neighbors and you guys want to go together, go together. Don't go just by yourself. Make sure that you're reporting what you see at the polls. If you see some malfeasance, this is a little while in the future, but it's definitely something to be aware of, because it's going to be here before we know it, and we need to start thinking about making sure that we're aware. I think in New York City, obviously, we're insulated. So this is more so for our listeners in places like North Carolina, South Carolina, our listeners in Texas, listeners in Florida, places where the congressional races are very, very tight. Make sure that you're out there documenting, and if you can volunteer to work in the polls, do that. That way you yourself are in there making sure there's no funny business.
Yeah, and I want to, because we're talking about really heavy topics like authoritarianism and fascism. So I want to go for a feel good, the feel good story of the week.
Do it.
It's gonna make you know what it is? Is the $75 million flop of Melania's fucking movie. I'm so happy that shit flopped. Like, it's so fucking bad, right? What's funny was, right, they paid, and I think she gets like 60%, right? Because she's the producer. So they paid Amazon, that gets to show you how bad things are, right? Jeff Bezos, right, is just trying to curry favor with the administration. So she
It's a
got
bribe.
40.
It was a bribe.
It's a bribe and a half. They got $40 million for the film. I think she got 60% of that 40 million, right?
The
And then they got
most
a
ever that they paid for a documentary.
Ever. And then they're spending 35 million, right, on marketing. That shit got a theatrical release. What? Like, you know how much great movies never get a theatrical release? They're just is a filmmaker. And they got Brett Ratner, who's been accused by multiple women of sexual assault. I mean, I think that goes in line with Trump and all that. But I'm
Epstein,
one of those things.
he's in the Epstein files.
He's to chill with Epstein like Trump, right? So that's one of that flop. Why it doesn't change anything. I saw on Instagram they were calling a flopiana or flopania or whatever. It was just so funny. It was such a flop. No one is buying. South Africa said no. You're not even putting you in theaters again. This shows you that there is overreach, and I'm so happy for this one story. This one silver lining of everything else that's happening. I'm so glad it flopped. Melania's a stupid bitch. I'm sorry I said she's dumb. And she met Trump on Epstein's plane. Apparently Epstein had her before Trump did, right? So
really?
All this shit, yeah, they met on the plane on Epstein's
I did
plane.
not know this.
And then they had a little sneaky link on that plane. Supposedly the first time they met, and Epstein had her before. So I'm glad that fucking movie. She's a horrible human being. So is the rest of them, and oh my god. So I'm glad that it flopped, but it still goes to show you though that these tech billionaires do not give a fuck about us. You know what I mean? They care about themselves and their profits. So one of the things that like protests are super important, but we need to organize. And how do we take money from these behemoths that don't give a fuck about us?
Yeah, man, it's very, very true. On Friday we had a national strike. And a lot of people, were on that. I think that's important. We need to really think our organizations need to think long and hard. How can they help us as individuals to redirect our money? How do we avoid using Amazon and things like that? I mean, Amazon Web Services is a huge, they're one of their biggest clients is ICE, so Amazon Web Services is sort of like the back end of the internet. They're the ones that manage all the data and everything. And, a lot of companies use Amazon Web Services, and including ICE, one of their biggest clients. We've got, I think, on the Upper East Side, there's a assembly race, and one of the candidates, and I don't remember his name, apologies for that, but used to work for Palantir, and he's out there talking about how bad ICE is, but he's he's part of the problem, so make sure that you are reading up if you're on the Upper East Side and you're adamant about these issues. Make sure you know who you're voting for. It's in all of it's inside of our lives. It's not something that we can ignore. We ignore it to our own peril.
100%. And people say, I don't get involved with politics. That's a political stance. You know what I mean? That's a political stance, and I always say this: you're either at the table or on the menu, and we've been on the menu for far too long. And again, just get out there, support, document, right? If you see ICE, you see ICE doing some type of activity in your community, stay from a safe distance, but record, right? Like if we hadn't captured some of these things on camera, we would be so some other place. If you didn't see that Renee Good was killed in cold blood, you wouldn't even know it, right? So I think it's important that we stay involved, stay recording, and stay looking out for each other.
That's right. Led, what else do you got for us? Anything else, or are we? I think we're done. Are we reaching the end of our morning chat here?
Yeah. I think we're reaching the end. I gotta do some things, some errands. I gotta run some errands. Plus, the wife is making breakfast, in the other room. So gonna go take
Yeah,
that off.
man.
How about you, brother? What are you doing today?
I think, in my little home studio here has sort of taken over our dining room, and it's time for me to organize some things over here because you can't see it from your end, but on the other side of the camera, it's looking kind of crazy, and it's time to make sure that it gets organized and put away. So that's the big thing on my agenda today. But beyond that, it's been so cold. I've been like, I don't want to go outside, but I feel like I've been cooped up. So I've been in this weird space where I'm like, I want to go outside, but it's so cold that I don't want to go outside.
Yeah, my wife was saying the same thing. She don't want to, but I will say one thing that I did. I think I felt afterwards, I felt like the smartest man in Babylon, right? So
Okay.
before the snowstorm hit, right, Saturday night this past weekend, I went on Spot Hero, and I felt like I spent $90 to park my car from Saturday night to Tuesday morning, right? But it was the best $90 I've spent. I didn't have to struggle through the snow. I didn't have to clean out my car. Tuesday morning, I just when I basically requested my car to be ready 10 minutes prior to getting there. Then when I got there, it was there. I parked on 180th, right by the Radio Hotel. And it was just like beautiful. My car was clean. I was like, man, I felt so smart and brilliant for doing that. So, I mean, again, because the snow is a problem. The snow is, if you have a car in the city, getting that car out, getting the parking spots. But I want to say again, I've been very lucky the last few days. I found street parking. So park your car in the garage with the next big snowstorm. It's a pro tip right there.
Pro tip. Yeah, you got somebody, you got a parking angel on your shoulder there. Led, I just want to thank you again, man. I'm enjoying this.
Thank you, brother.
I think this is
Me
great.
too.
This is a great opportunity. We're able to have important people in the community to come on our show and talk about the issues. That's really, really great. Oh, I want to say this. YouTube, we have reached 400 subscribers on our YouTube page.
Nice.
So
keep it going.
That's a good one. Let's keep on going. We have a goal of 500. 500 is when we can start to actually monetize in some ways. YouTube doesn't make it easy to do all this, but 500 is one of the parameters that we have to meet. I think that for our audience, it should be easy for us to meet that 500 goal. We already hit 400, and so I thank you everybody who has subscribed. This has been great, and it makes me feel proud of what we're doing, and it makes me feel like people care about what we're doing because they're getting up there and they're subscribing and they want to hear from us. So I thank you, Led, for letting me be a part of your network. Uptown Collective has been something that you've built through the years, that you've been, and you and yours have been, feeding and representing. You are the voice of Uptown, and I'm just super happy that I was able that we've been friends for a long time, and that I've been able to do this with you and take part of this and be a part of your network. Your credibility goes a long way, and so to share that with me is it's a true honor. So I thank you for that.
Likewise, brother. Thank you for making this happening, for making this happen, for really saying, yo, we got to do this, because we've been doing this without a podcast for a long time. So thank you for making it happen. And this has been a tremendous journey. And I think as important as it is now, in the future, people are going to be able to look and see who was doing what uptown, and we're documenting, really important conversations, because this is an important community. So thank you for making this happen. Because again, you do really a lot of the heavy lifting here. I just talk a lot of shit, but that's my forte anyway. So it's not a stretch for me. But thank you so much, and we're gonna keep rocking. Like, to the subscribers, tell your peoples about it. Say, yo, subscribe, listen, tune in, right? If you care about Washington Heights, Inwood, Harlem, the Bronx, you care about New York City, this is an important, every week we, at least once or twice, we hitting you, right? So this takes a lot of time, a lot of commitment. So just spread that love, give us a subscription, tell your people about it, and spread love is the Uptown way.
That's right. All right.